Hi, welcome to Chapter 9, where we're going to talk about strategy formulation. So, in Chapter 9, the key issues are going to be the fundamentals of a SWOT analysis, human, organizational, and physical resources, using the SWOT matrix to help make strategic decisions, using the SCLC matrix to help evaluate alternatives, and issues in strategy formulation. So let's start with this SWOT analysis. So the SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, so the purpose of this is to organize research and put a perspective on a useful framework for strategic decision making. Now, strengths and weaknesses, these are the first two elements of the SWOT analysis, and they represent internal firms' attributes. So strengths and weaknesses are each company does have its certain strengths and weaknesses. In some companies, strengths could be brand identity, customer loyalty, the organizational behavior, the effectiveness of the management, which is past successes. So weaknesses, of course, could be the slowing down of the markets they serve, scandals, tax issues, or ethical dilemmas, or just being a poor competitor in a strong market. Now, to help better identify these, you could do a gap analysis. So this is going to seek to identify the distance between a firm's current position and its desired position regarding its internal weaknesses. So whatever firm can, they should take action to close this gap. So when they can recognize what a weakness is and the gap between the weakness and becoming competent, they need to assess how vulnerable they are, external threats in the environment due to this weakness, and simply look to close the performance in this gap as best as possible. So strategic decisions should be determined that would best shore up these weaknesses or compensate for these weaknesses or develop a competitive advantage to do better than rivals. So, not all gaps need to be addressed. Product turnover in different businesses, cost structures, these are different things that are, could be weaknesses, but are primarily already being recognized and worked on. Now, the value chain, when we talk about a value chain, we're looking at a concept of trying to analyze a firm's strengths and weaknesses and evaluate how they may translate into a competitive advantage or disadvantage for a company. So the value chain is going to look at all the activities that comprise the economic performance and capabilities within a firm. So the value chain is, think of it, of steel chain and links in the chain. So in order to get from the beginning of the chain to the end of the chain, each link has to be strong, and each link has to contribute to the strength of the chain. So one weak link breaks the chain, and that's sort of the idea with the value chain. We want to look through and do a systematic approach to look for where you have weak links or low value inputs, or even strong links to higher value outputs. And specifically, we want to identify the primary and support activities that that's going to create value for customers, for suppliers, for stakeholders, for employees. And this could include inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing, service. So, and support activities, specifically customer service, technologies, procurement. And the idea here is to look at everything along the way and see if there's any weak points that changes could be made to really improve the profitability and the strength of the company's competitive positions. Okay. So when we're talking about strategic capabilities, these are resources that the firm can translate into strengths or weaknesses via these strategic capabilities. So it's a mechanism which individuals and organizations can coordinate efforts along with one or more resources to solve a particular problem. So what are the capabilities of the company, and how can they be leveled or leveraged to improve their strengths and also improve upon their weaknesses. Now, sources of organizational strength and weaknesses. So there's three broad areas here of a firm's resources that could be associated with the firm's strength and weaknesses. One is human resources. So here we're talking about the experience, capabilities, knowledge, strength, and judgment of the firm's employees. So it's human capital. It's ability for the people in the company to make the difference. In some companies, their human capital and the human resources are very dependent on the products they make. So in a company that's making films, comic books, literature, anything where there's a creative process where you need people to really have superior inputs to create the demand for your products. Organizational resources, this is the firm's abilities to operationally run the company, systems and processes, how the company is organized, what computer systems do they have, what distribution systems, the strategies it's going to deploy at various levels of structure and culture. These can all be strengths or weaknesses. Or physical resources. What type of real estate, plant, equipment, countries, locations they operate, access to raw materials, distribution networks, technology, supplier relations. So let's just move back to human resources for a minute. So some issues to consider in human resources, of course, are going to be the board of directors. So they contribute to the firm. So basically, a board of directors is the top level, and a strong board would be able to provide experience, knowledge, judgment, and shape the management of the company to get closer to meeting its goals and strategic plans. Tenure, which is the experience of the members of the board. So the board of directors, the longer they're on the board, or the more knowledge or experience they have at other companies, and the more beneficial it can be to keeping the company on course, and even looking for and obtaining new board members that could give a more fresh perspective to strategic issues. And then connection to the firm, the ability for various stakeholders to have a better connection to the company and their inputs and their ideas. So top management, it's not uncommon for top management to be board members for this representation on the board to help these managers connect other board members to employees and other stakeholders, creditors, customers, suppliers, local community, to give a more balanced perspective of how the strengths and the weaknesses of the company and how they're performing. Now, let's talk about top management for a second. So when we're looking at top management, backgrounds and capabilities, so we want to comprehend what are the strengths and weaknesses of each of these managers. What are their experiences, management style, what successes have they had, what failures have they have, how is the decision making, how is their leadership, how are they working in a team. So top management have various areas where they can have strengths and weaknesses. So if you have these executives in your companies, they make a lot of big decisions, and the better your management is, the stronger your competitive advantages could be developed. So, and this is something that a lot of mutual fund managers, investors look to not just the performance of the company, but to get to know their managers and their history and how confident they are the managers to be, innovative and entrepreneurial, and have good administration skills to really keep the company on track and moving forward. So top management, we have to look at their tenure, the length of the company, their stability, and individual strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes, bringing in fresh management is a good way to shake things up, or bring experience in from other companies that were successful to really help the company move forward if they get into a rut or stuck with the current management that's really just not performing effectively. All right. And then, of course, this will boil down to middle management, supervisors, employees. These are all people who are going to be part of the human capital that need to be strategically placed and evaluated, and they need to be trained and developed and supported. Turnover needs to be minimized to put an emphasis on performance and rewards and initiatives to keep the talented people in the company and to integrate them into the strategic plans of the company and keep them positively motivated to make the company a success. Okay. If we move to organizational resources, some things to consider, of course, is consistency among the corporate, business, and functional strategies. So if we want to make sure that everybody's sort of working to the same goals. So if the organization has a good method of making sure that, at the corporate, business, and functional levels, they facilitate a strategic integration so that the corporation, business units, functional lead management, all are representing and working towards a strategic plan that has been put in place. So each level has a different thing to contribute, and we want some consistency between organizational strategies and the firm's missions and goals. So everybody who's in top management should understand what the missions and goals are of the company and be able to communicate how they are working towards and supporting these goals and mission. Consistency between the firm's strategies and culture. We need, we need to make sure that the strategies are in line with what the culture of the company can produce, and that strategies are effective for the particular corporate culture, and the corporate culture supports and emphasizes the value and the reasonableness of the strategic plan. Consistency between the firm's strategies and its structure. So any structural changes in the company should be in alignment with the firm's strategies. So any major changes in how the firm is organized, and oftentimes firms do become reorganized to better able and deploy successful strategies. Position within the industry. So this is something that the organization needs to be aware of what their position is, either at the top, middle, or bottom, and how the implementation of their strategic decisions can change depending on what position they are within the industry. Products and service quality. It's important for the organization to understand the quality levels of the firm's products and services and how they align with the strategy. And lastly, reputation of the firm's brand. So the strategic decisions or strategic plans, brand should always be a top factor, and high quality and high customer service is a way to maintain the identity of a strong brand, as well as strong advertising and customer awareness. Okay, so let's move on to physical resources to consider. Of course, when we're talking about the technologies is one area. So how do your technologies stack up to competitors? Are they superior? How's your ability to utilize the technologies in your company to achieve achieve and maintain your competitive advantage, to achieve your strategic plans? So this is something that could be a strength or weakness. Some companies, quite frankly, have pretty poor technology and systems in place that really hinder the company or create many hundreds of hours of extra work that are unnecessary. The quality and sophistication of distribution networks. How strong is your distribution network? How reliable and how supportive are the outlets selling your product to helping your company grow and achieve its strategic position, or help maintain your competitive advantage? And this is one extremely large competitive advantage for Coke and Pepsi. The distribution networks are very effective in getting their product out there, and also very effective in limiting new competition from getting shelf space or space in vending machines or at convenience stores or gas stations or restaurants. Production capabilities. How do you make your product? Is there a strength or weakness in your production? Is it all domestic, or are you integrating international operations as well? So there could be serious problems in production capability as companies expand, get larger, or try to shift obligations of production and manufacturing to more lower cost centers. So reliable access to cost-effective sources of suppliers. How is the company suppliers? Is it just one supplier that has a lot of control, or many different suppliers? This could be a strength or weakness, and if there's one strong supplier, maybe you need to foster an environment where more suppliers to go out and find more suppliers. Locations. So like real estate, locations mean everything. So where are the locations for your retail, for your labor, your suppliers, your customers? So does your locations of where your distribution channel are for customers to get your product or services, does that align with your strategic goals for your company and your strategic management of your company? Okay, so here is um, a framework, that VRINO framework, that can help strategic managers evaluate the corporate, qualities and resources controlled by an organization. So it has 5 progressive characteristics to follow an assessment of the concepts um, of objective value. So let's look at this chart now. Value. So it can be a resource to be employed or exploited, an opportunity, or neutralize an external threat. Resources that are merely valuable can assist in the firms attaining competitive parity with rivals. So, but not a competitive advantage. So what is the value of your company? So if your company has very valuable, how can I say, benefits to its operations, its products, this could, certainly enhance the company's position. So rarity. So when we're talking about resources, all of these we're talking about resources. So if we're trying to figure out, when we first talk about a value, if you look at all your different resources we kind of talked about before, and you try to rank the value they have, a superior value or underperforming value in the company. And then we can look at the rarity. So what resources does your company control that is very valuable but rare and can produce a competitive advantage, something that you can do that many other companies can't do, such as Coke's distribution network, Starbucks brand loyalty and quality image, things that is a rarity as a resource that other companies are going to look to try to compete against. Next we move into imitable. So for the main resources of your company that are valuable and maybe have some rarity, how easy is it to imitate or acquire these resources? Can rivals or competitors be able to quickly get these same valuable and rare resources that you have? So how easy is it to be copied, to be duplicated, to achieve a competitive advantage over long term? Non-substitutable. So can other available resources be substituted for a resource in question? So if so, can rivals obtain the substitute resources even if the resource in question is not readily available? So basically there's a resource that you have that's an advantage, but there's some sort of substitute way to a different way of doing something that could be just as effective and render your competitive advantage in your resource, make it make it less useful to you, or they can compete at the same level of you because they found a different way of doing things. And lastly, organizational. Is the firm poised to exploit the resources? So is the organization in a good position to utilize the resources that a company has? It's a shame when a company has some really decent people, strengths, resources, but they're not able to leverage them to earn value. So they're not able to sustain them as a competitive advantage because it's just too easy for competitors to see what you're doing and copy your resources or strengths. So resources can be translated into desired results by a firm's capabilities, its skills to coordinate and leverage these resources to create value. So it's not enough just to have these resources. You have to be able to know how to utilize them to the fullest in your company. Okay, so let's switch over to opportunities and threats as the second half of the matrix. So now when we think of opportunities and threats, what we're thinking about here, we're associating these two with outside factors mostly. But strength and weaknesses we were talking about internal, where opportunities and threats we're going to talk about more external environment and resources. So as such, they must be analysis in the industry and the microenvironment that we talked about earlier, political, legal, economic, social, and technological forces we had talked about in previous chapters. So industry level analysis may identify general factors that stage the shift away from level from the firm's level, and considers how the external forces could be affect the organization under its consideration. So what in the environment that the company operates in, what are some opportunities that they need to establish and exploit, and what are some threats that can come into challenge the business? So here, on the external front, company really needs to look at the industry, their consumers, what opportunities are out there for the company to grow, to innovate, to really establish a market leadership. And then the same token, what threats are there from other competitors, from governments, from changes in demographics, changes in people's attitudes that could really affect your product or company? So one pitfall, don't confuse external opportunities and internal strength with internal strengths and weaknesses. So even this could happen where this is confusing, but that's why we try to break them up between internal and external. And so some factors that a company may be in a poor financial position or ineffective marketing strategy, or they may have a weak brand. So these are internal things that should be classified as strengths and weaknesses, in contrast to external, which is more demographic changes, competitive threats. It could be legal or other external environments that must be classified as our opportunities and threats. So it's always good to think of them as internal and external. Strengths and weaknesses, internal; opportunities and threats, external. Distinguish between opportunities and alternatives. So sometimes we get confused with these words. Are too similar. It could be some people's minds are a little too similar, but opportunities really represent something you can do in your macro environment that could be really advantageous to the company and all. Where alternatives is really just changing from one modality to another, but doesn't mean that alternative is better. But we should, measure those alternatives and see if there's an opportunity with them. To give us some specific course of action to pursue as a company to do better. Okay, so let's switch right over to the SWOT matrix. So we're going to take these four elements: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and we're going to analyze them in a grid, a graph, which is going to be a matrix that's going to help us to find external opportunities, look at internal strengths and weaknesses, and hopefully get us into a mind frame of where our company is standing today, so we can make decisions upon improving upon our competitive strategy, our mission, our goals. So this is just really an exercise to evaluate where we are and what steps to take next. So there's four categories that we talked about, and there's four categories of alternatives. So we could talk about strength opportunity, and these are more of offensive alternatives that are common and involved in utilizing an organizational strengths to address the opportunities. But in the late, for example, when we're talking about different companies, expanding into markets, trying to leverage their strengths and get on track with a growth opportunity. So say different retailers or fast food restaurants are trying to expand their reach and expand their locations across the country, and this could sometimes be a big opportunity. But one weakness or threat could be that other companies are going to expand into the same markets, and you're going to have less customers to choose from because there's too many similar competitors competing in a similar market. So a weakness or threat could be more defensive. If say you're trying to defend your home market, say Dunkin' Donuts is their home market's mostly the northeast, and as they're trying to push out into the west and south and Midwest, Starbucks is trying to expand as quickly also to fill in any gaps where there's not sufficient coffee shops to accommodate the local populations. If we're looking at strength threat, this is utilizing a strength to minimize the effect of a threat. So if you have, like, Coke and Pepsi have very strong distribution networks that are locked into their two companies, they can use those distribution networks to prevent other sort of companies from getting any distribution, thereby using that strength of distribution to minimize the threat of new companies coming into the beverage market. Opportunity weakness, this is to shore up weaknesses to enable organizations to take advantage of an opportunity. So you want to fix your weaknesses or compensate for your weaknesses so you can get moving as an opportunity. So maybe you're a small company and other companies don't want to work with you because they don't think you'll be able to handle their volume or the support they're going to need. So if that's a weakness, you go and you hire more customer service or have better and clearer customer service policies to reassure them that you could handle that opportunity. Okay, so here's a matrix for McDonald's that we could look at. And so in the opportunities, growth in emerging markets, increasing health consciousness in the U.S. and other markets. So the opportunity there is that they could do something to take advantage of people's taste for healthier foods. Threats, global economic downturn, or growing popularity of easy to prepare items from the grocery store. Or, so you could also, maybe if we update this, maybe it's an economic expansion and maybe there's growing competition for those ready to prepare meals that you cook at home, such as Blue Apron, Hello Fresh, things of that nature. So strengths of McDonald's, its financial stability and resources of the company, its very recognizable brand name, its consistency and effectiveness of its operations. Weakness for maybe unhealthy or bad tasting food and dependency on unhealthy or fried foods. So then we could look at this matrix and say, okay, some alternatives, expanding more locations into the BRIC countries, and that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, what we call BRIC. Expand to healthier food alternatives in their restaurants to attract new customers, and launch foods in the grocery outlets, so maybe they could sell McDonald's-based foods and groceries, something that McDonald's did when they owned Boston Market. Boston Market came out with a line of TV dinners that you could buy at the grocery store. So again, it's a management tool that we can put our matrix together and then try to think of, look at this matrix and how could we leverage these facts about the company to move forward. So if we look at McDonald's, we could kind of look at the level of strategic alternative and the degree of strategic complexity. So what's the hardest thing to do? Maybe launch new locations in foreign countries, and something easier to expand, create new menu items that will be a bit healthier. And the strategy level, it's very functional. This would be maybe at more of a business level, trying to launch frozen foods, and on a corporate level would be more of the international expansion. So this is how we could, put this into an SLSC matrix for, the next step in the after the SWOT. So SLSC stands for Strategic Level Strategic Complexity Matrix. That's going to compare and contrast the alternatives on the basis of the strategy level. Is it going to be the corporate, business, or functional level, and how complex it is to get those particular strategies deployed and make them successful in contributing back to the company. So, so each of these alternatives in McDonald's, are things that are going to affect different levels or different development of the company to get these things launched and out there to start contributing back to the company. Now, issues in strategic formulation. So some of the issues that we should be wary about is strategic change. Do the benefits outweigh the costs? So if you are going to pursue some strategic change, this could be a very costly. If you're going to change your culture, if you're going to make big changes in how you sell or organize your products or retailers, this could be very costly. And so, do the potential benefits of moving to this strategic change for your company gonna really have a good chance of outweighing the risks and the costs? Social responsibility and ethics. How will this new strategy align the company with its social responsibility and ethical goals? So, for a company like McDonald's, maybe they move into healthier foods, which is something that they would feel would be more socially responsible and more ethical to have a menu, especially when they're dealing with the child meals or the happy meals, making a little bit more healthier choices in there for children, which is a big concern for a lot of people. So what effect does the change have on the strategy of the company as far as its existing resources? So do these changes leverage the existing resources or minimize the existing resources? And how is that going to integrate into making profits for the company? And how will competitors respond when these changes are implemented? For example, when Starbucks started moving into breakfast items and breakfast sandwiches, McDonald's retaliated by creating the McCafe and attacking Starbucks on higher end lattes and coffee related drinks and iced coffees and shakes and smoothies and things of that nature. So when a competitor changes their strategy slightly to try to gain an advantage, offer a new product line, move into a new product area, they may spark competition, additional competition among other competitors who may say, okay, you're moving into my market, we're going to start offering products that you deliver to your customers as a way to fight back against that change that you've implemented as a company. So sometimes you could make a change in your company you think is going to be great, and your competitors are going to turn around and put the screws to you and make it harder for you to compete or become successful. And a lot of times you might have in many different industries where an industry decides to lower prices or offer different features or different amenities or different rewards, then your competitors are going to look at that and they're going to probably move into and decide to co-opt that and do something very similar. Now, in addition to this book, we're also going to be talking about and reading and discussing the blue ocean strategy, and that kind of ties into the effects on the organizational resources. So a blue ocean strategy is an approach to grow a contingent or invest or in a discovery or a new industry or industry segment that's going to create additional demands for a company. So when we look at companies like Starbucks, eBay, Circus Olay, they reinvented the coffee house, the auction, the circus industry. And if you look at Green Mountain Coffee, they reinvented how to make coffee at home with their Keurig and their pods. So these are companies that were able to expand into new markets by or untapped markets, or expand their contingent or catchment of who their customers are by really innovating new segments or new ways of competing that just leapfrog the current competition. And this is such an important aspect of how business is done and how to succeed in business, this blue ocean concept. There's a whole book on it that we're going to be exploring in this class that you should be reading, and we're going to be discussing that can really help drive this point home a little bit more succinctly. Okay, so that is it for chapter I forgot to advance the slide on blue ocean. So just a little bit more about the blue ocean. I have a couple lectures coming up just about the blue ocean that ties into the book. So, and like I said, it's a way to become successful by really rethinking the business model in a way that you're going to leapfrog your current competition at such a level that they're really going to be scrambling to catch up. Sort of like when Apple released the iPhone, it was really the first smartphone that clicked with consumers, had so much benefits and so much innovation in the iPhone. It was so easy to use, intuitive, and with their app store, they really were dominating the market for a long time with that blue ocean product. I mean, and then you did have a number of years later, Samsung was able 5, 6 years later to catch up to and duplicate a lot of those blue ocean aspects, and now it's up to Apple to kind of reinvent the wheel again and create a new blue ocean and another product. And they've tried that with the Apple Watch, and things like that nature. So we will be talking a lot more about blue ocean in the weeks to come. So I look forward to that. Thank you, and this concludes chapter 9, and I look forward to talking with you in chapter 10. So we will be moving into chapter 10 very soon. Thank you, and take care.